All right, all right. Thank you so much again for allowing me to be in your classroom and use some of your time. I know that we are busy, especially with conferences and all that we got going on. But this is our post-conference, and it's more of our post-observation conference, and it's more collaborative.
Okay.
I loved being in your class, being able to see you just in action, even after, being with you for the years that we were together teaching. So it's just been a great experience. But I want to collaborate. We want to talk. We want to share your ideas, how you felt about the lesson. I'm going to share what I felt and what I've seen. And we're going to come up with some strategies to help you just become a more, advanced and higher level teacher.
Okay.
So first of all, I want to take a minute and ask you to reflect on the lesson. Like, what were your feelings about it all together?
I felt that it went really well. The song, whenever I bring songs in, it helps my students to remember the whole process a lot and remember those facts, because they're going to need those. If they're doing the, make a 10, they're going to need to remember which numbers actually make a 10. So.
And I'm telling you, when you started singing, I was like, 8 + 2 equals... I was jabbing, for real. I was like, this is so good. And even watching, you on video, because I recorded it, obviously, as you know, and I got to go through it and skim it. And I was just like, that was really good. And watching the behaviors and the reactions and the engagement of the kids, did they already know the song, or did
they watched it one time?
One time.
Yeah.
So that tells you how well songs catch, and it teaches them.
Right.
So that was fantastic. And so overall in the environment, did you feel like it went well? Do you feel like you were able to top it or tap into the goals and the prior knowledge of the students?
I think I could have explained the anticipatory set a little bit more for them to understand.
Gotcha.
But they did eventually get the whole idea of what they were supposed to do. But
so you're talking about the 5-group card,
yes.
And I literally, I agree with you. So when I was tapping through there, let's actually go there. I think we're in here right now. Because I gave you one of the scripted pre-ops of the whole lesson that I did, and you have the CSTP. But I literally was saying the same thing. I was like, okay, that, just because they were kind of like,
right,
but that's okay. But you knew that as a teacher, and I could tell throughout the lesson, you were still checking for understanding. You didn't, just go here you're on your own. Figure it out. So no, you did good there.
Right.
Totally agree. We did agree upon the CSTP 1D3, and I'll read that again. We said to improve student outcomes by addressing individual student assets and needs while creating equitable outcomes for all.
Right.
So how do you think you did focusing on that CSTP and making sure that it was connected to the student learning? How do you think you did there?
I think it went really well because a lot of the students, there was a lot of movement, a lot of action. So it wasn't just they were sitting there for 50 minutes doing the same thing. And so it held their attention because they were doing different things.
Yeah.
And I know my students, and I know that if it goes too long, they totally check out. And so I wanted to be able to do something different with that.
And that was true. I even looked at it. I was like, this was 50 minutes, and that's a long span of time, you know. And they did actually very well for that time on the carpet. So, yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. Do you have a place that knowing what, we already went through the lesson, is there a place you feel like you want to focus on? Maybe an area of strength or somewhere that you're like, hey, I really feel like I need to do better there, or I would like to learn more there.
More of the instructional strategies.
Okay, that's what we mentioned before.
Yes, and just if I could add, if there's any more movement or any more strategies that could be added into there. So again, because it doesn't stay, just static. So there's some movements or there's different strategies so they don't get accustomed or they don't get bored.
Absolutely. And I'm excited because today I was like, okay, I'm ready for that. I remember you asked, and I was like, we'll add some things in. And when I was watching, I was like, I think there's some things that could help if you want to. If not, you could let me know, because definitely want to make sure that you have the autonomy to pick what you want in your class. So like I said, the Rainbow Facts to 10 was amazing. I believe that it just introduced the whole concept well. The kids knew what they were doing. They knew their facts, and it looked fun. I was jamming. And I seen that you are really good at fostering an environment of culture. You include the kids. It's very a culturally responsive environment. You make sure that you include the students in their background. So I did appreciate that. I felt that all the students felt engaged and like they belonged. Like nobody was an outsider. Even your one student that has the special needs, the IEP student.
Right.
He even felt, I could tell that he was like, I know he doesn't have, he's nonverbal and all of that, but still, the kids weren't affected by him, and the show still continues. So I can tell that you've set a good environment and you've established a good culture in your classroom.
Thank you.
And you promote equity and inclusion for all your kids, if I didn't say that, but I think that's important. I think it's hard now to, especially when you have lots of different behaviors, different personalities, different backgrounds, to make sure you establish that. But you do a very good, you do a very good job doing that.
Thank you.
So I did want to kind of dive more into some of the examples of your video. I noticed that, you did very well in redirecting 2 students.
Oh.
You're like, I know exactly who they are.
Yeah.
You did very well in redirecting them, like right away. I believe it was around the 14th minute or so. And I'll kind of go ahead here to that section, because I know you did your 5-group card game, which you said that and we'll talk about that in a minute, because I do agree that there's some things that we could do there. Actually, let's go back to that, because I believe what I noticed there is right before you introduced the game. Excuse me. You allowed them to say whoever went first has the shorter hair, and I think there that they were like, oh well, whose hair shorter? Then everybody's like, and so there's like this whole distraction of hair. Have you ever tried anything different? Are you up to other suggestions on how to maybe introduce that?
Of course. The reason I would just so happen to have students with really long hair.
Well, I know. I was like, how is she going to do this? Because there's like 2 kids.
Right. And usually it's like there's a bigger difference. But a lot of the girls their hair is longer, and so it's like, which one is longer? And
absolutely.
It doesn't usually take that long.
And that is the funny thing about, I feel like when you're being observed, you're like, I like that usually doesn't happen, but now it's happening, just in those moments. And so, one suggestion that I would think of is rock, paper, scissors is always an easy one. And I know that they'll want to go like 3 times. Right. And I'm like, just once. And whoever wins, unless you tie. And then you have automatically somebody who won.
Right.
And then you can decide, hey, whoever wins is A, whoever doesn't win is B. Or if you're like, okay, I don't want to do that, you can, before the lesson, already have the partners established and who's going to go first.
Right.
And then I know as far as teaching, that's extra prep time, but we know with littles, all that time matters. Right. So, hey, I need to get this done really quick, and then you don't. Right. But yes, I did notice that, so I think it was fine, but I was like, okay. I also noticed that you mentioned Sonic chili dogs. I think it was cute too, because I have that culturally, responsive part of that. I was like, okay, Sonic. I don't like Sonic chili dogs, so I was like, ugh. But the kids were like, yay! And Michael was like, yeah, they're good. And then you asked him like, why? And he was like, or you asked him. I think you asked him a suggestion about the Sonic hot dogs, and he was like, they're so good. And then another student was like, well, I don't like Sonic hot dogs. And you were like, but that's okay. Yeah. Like we don't all have to like everything in order to agree upon it or use it for this lesson. And I thought that was a real good redirecting of students and making sure that they understand that we, all of our opinions matter. Right. Everything we say, like we don't have to agree, but we need to be responsive to that. Mm-hmm. Would you have changed any part of that, or do you think that was pretty effective?
It was pretty effective. Yeah. I mean, not only responsive, but respectful.
Exactly.
And that's what one of our 3 goals in our class is, to be respectful because we don't always have the same opinions.
Absolutely. And you always do this too. I was like, her little hands. I'm like, that's so cute. And it's so like, but yeah, all your little, I got to see all of that. I was like, oh, Miss Shubar. Oh, sorry. But great job with the 30-second prompting as well. Letting them know that you were moving on to the next section, I think is important, that that students can anticipate what's coming next. That's part of that objective, making sure and as a teacher, you remind yourself, these are my learning goals, like what's next, and so I think keeping yourself on those points, and you were very good at making sure you kept to that 30 seconds, because sometimes we'll say 30 seconds and then it's like 3 minutes later, and the kids are like, you said 30 seconds ago that we were moving on. But absolutely good. Any other things that you noticed from that time, or do you think you flowed well there?
No, it was good, because time management is really important to me, because I used to take a long time. I used to be like, oh my goodness, it's lunchtime and we haven't even gotten to the application problem, and so I want to make sure that we get through the meat of the lesson, and so our students know what they're supposed to do, because we do have homework that ties to the lesson that we're learning for the day.
Okay, absolutely. Good, wonderful. I do, going into the next part of this, I noticed that, and this connects back to that the Giovanni and the Michael, I know that they had, they required a lot of energy, because you were like, Michael, Giovanni, Michael. And so, but looking at that, I noticed that there were some students who didn't get so much attention, because I felt, in looking, I felt, and counting, I think it was with Giovanni, I think he was redirected 3 times, or 2 times, and then you actually called on him to answer questions 3 times. And then for Michael, it was redirected 3 times, and you called on him 3 times to answer questions as well. So in looking at it, at first when I was in the classroom, I didn't really notice. I mean, I noticed from hearing the names, but then when I was watching, I was like, oh man, that's a lot. And then compared to the other kids, but I know when you're in the motion of it, you're like, okay, and then you're like trying to redirect them too, because it's like, okay, don't do that. So maybe if I call on you, and I don't know, maybe
that's what it was.
Okay,
it was to keep them engaged, because if I keep them engaged, they have less time to get in trouble. And so I was like, okay, let's keep you on your toes, because if you're not paying attention, I'm going to call on you, and I don't want you to freeze out. But it was more of like keeping them in, and also bringing attention to, and letting them know, hey, I'm watching you.
Absolutely.
Stay on task, even though I call
and
them
you
down.
did fantastic. Like, and it was so cool, because as soon as you would call on them, like they were like, okay, no. So it was almost like they knew. So you could tell that rapport was there, that they understood. Are you open to suggestions in how to maybe flow in that area a little bit better?
Of course.
Yeah. As I was watching the video, I thought, and I know some people at times when you give like a suggestion for something that's kind of like outdated, they're like, but equity sticks is great. Like just in those moments, because when a student is causing a lot of distraction, or tends to be a student who gets distracted, you automatically say their name quite a few times. So the kids are constantly hearing that. Plus, if you call on them all the time, you don't necessarily keep track of how many times. So they end up kind of, taking over the lesson. And so I think equity sticks would be great. Just to have him there, and then you realize, okay, as soon as I've already called him, I don't call him anymore for that, but I can redirect him.
We actually use them for grammar.
Oh, so, there you go. See?
But because there's 2 of us, we've got 1 set, so I'll make another set.
Okay, and I can totally help you make one too. And I remember, being in those moments, and I'm like, I should be, like, this would be more effective for real, you know. But I know when you're moving fast, and I know, do you do math every day?
Yes.
Yeah, and so and the kids know, and you're kind of like in the motion. So, but just having those little things set up already, so in those moments, you're like, okay, I'm not gonna constantly, but just like I said, a suggestion on those. I noticed in your small group time as well, your problem set pages. I think it was. You did all your lesson, which was beautiful, which we'll talk about a little bit too. You did the lesson, and the students that were ready, they went back to their desk, right? And then you called a few students And I'm assuming there were some of your EL students or maybe.
Right.
Okay.
And students I knew that needed extra support.
Gotcha.
So even if they felt like, oh, I'm going to go do it at my desk, I'm like, no, come and stay at the carpet. Thank you.
I love it.
Yeah.
The little guy in the red here, I think it's Josiah, right?
Yes.
Yes. So during the lesson, there was some really cool moments. Actually, I'm going to point this out. You were talking to him the very beginning of the lesson. It was around 8 minutes in, so let's go there. 8:05. Oops, too fast. Here we go. So you're actually at this moment, you were I guess at that him and his partner had an issue with he couldn't remember what one needed to make 10.
Right.
So you were very effective. You came, you kind of mentioned to him, you said, Josiah, what does one need? And he kind of didn't know. So you walked around, and then into that proximity, you got into his space, which I thought was beautiful. Instead of yelling across the class, what does it need, Josiah? You know how we can be because we don't want to go. You did excellent. You walked over to him. You got quiet. The kids weren't all, responsive or paying attention to his responses. And then you did some gestures with him, and you were like, okay, put up your finger. It was like, so put up one finger and count on. So there's that strategy being used. Right. And then Josiah started to do it. He still didn't get it though. And then you said, okay, well, how much do you have on your hands? And he started to count by one. And you were like, wait a minute, hold on. How many is on this hand? Right. And he was like, I don't know. And you were like, and he goes, 5. She goes, and you said, it's always going to be 5. And so when he realized that, he was like, oh, it's 9. Right. And you're like, good, ready to go. And so you walked away. And I think that was a beautiful depiction on how we should make sure that we're paying attention and being aware of what's occurring with our students on the carpet. So with Josiah, you did an excellent job doing that. And going back to that, thinking about him, he was one that I know you kind of talked to a little bit on the carpet before you sent them off to do your the problem set. So you didn't call his name though to stay. You called a couple others. I don't think you did. I don't remember you calling his name. The reason why I say that is because he left and then he came back on his own. Yeah. So I thought that was really nice. And so he was like, okay, I'm gonna go try to do this. Right. But I don't know how to do this, so I'm gonna go sit down. And so he sneaks back in a little bit later and kind of hangs out with you guys. And I just thought it was good that you give them that freedom. And I knew that he felt comfortable with that. Right. You weren't like, oh, Josiah, you need to come back here. He was like, you're like, no, go try. And if you don't, you can come back. Yeah. So even within that experience, so within that small group, are you up for suggestions on kind of how to navigate that a little bit more efficiently? Sure. Okay. So what I was noticing is that when you were with them, you were on your DocuCam, and actually let's go there because it was really good. We'll skip on down to there. There we go. It was really good. All right, so here we are. So he's not even at the carpet yet. Yeah. You're getting ready, and here he's going to come down. See how he joined you? So it was really cool because he was like, I'm not sure. But at this moment, you are leading still from the paper. And so I do know, like, Engage New York is very paper dominant. Like, there's a lot of problem sets. There's exit tickets. There's homework. There's all these things. The application, even the lesson, is extremely long. So the kids are like constantly seeing paper. So one suggestion I would have is that, especially with a small group like this, possibly doing either like cards with those problems already on them, or cutting up the paper. And if you don't have time to make cards, cut up the paper into the problems and have them work separately. Make it like a game. I always think games. How can I make this a game? It may not even be a game, but I call it a game. So how do we make this? And so it's not so much that they're sitting there again, having to do the same thing again, but we're going to make this a game. And you honestly, with the problem set in general, you could do that for all the kids. Take out the problem set completely and break it into cards. Make it a group activity to where they're up and that's one thing I could possibly come in and do with you. But pre-make cards or pre-make something, strips to where they're having to solve it with a partner, and whoever solves it first, gets a point or something like that, to where we literally just did the whole problem set, but we never sat on the carpet. We never watched me. We do a couple of modeling. You model it like you did before, but after that, we're not going to see the paper until the exit ticket. And it just kind of gives some relief from the paper, and it gets them up, gets that engagement going. In that 50 minutes time, they're looking and they're like, it's already time to go. I want to continue my game, because they think it's a game. So but
there's Alexander.
And he was great too. He said hello to me. So now the CSTP, are there any areas, I know you mentioned the instructional strategies, which you mentioned, just getting in those activities, maybe doing strips, not ticket strips, but sentence strips with number of word problems on them, or however you want to do that. You know what's coming. We can create those. What additional resources or materials do you think you would need? Or I know you may not necessarily know, or that you think you may want. I know instructional strategies we talked about, but is there anything else that you think you may need or want to accompany you?
So I think breaking it up is a good idea. And so if we did something at the beginning, the anticipatory set, and then ended with something. So again, it's movement.
Yes.
And, we talked about, and one of our PDs was how movement helps student learning. And so if there's movement and they're doing something else, it's really going to make it stick.
And I do know for us, as educators, time is of the essence. So you're thinking prep. I don't have time to prep that. That's why I was cut it up. You don't have to just cut the papers up and literally just pass them out. And it takes just a moment, so you can, on the fly, you can make that happen. So
and I remember one of the students, when they were doing the game, they're like, this is fun. I'm like, yeah, why do you say we don't have fun all the time?
You're like, we're always having fun over there.
Math is fun.
Yeah.
And so if they were to go back to that and do it with partners and use their whiteboard and solve it on the whiteboard and share it, it would be like a game to them.
Absolutely. So I think that just kind of diving, when we come back to, or when we surface again and talk about this, or maybe when I can come in again with you, we can try some of those strategies and see how they work. Would you like to continue on this CSTP, or do you think this is an area that you would like to continue to work on, tapping into student assets and needs to increase their outcomes?
I think so, because as throughout the year, they're going to grow.
Yeah.
And their needs are going to change. And so it's something that I feel like I always need to be
on your toes.
On my toes about.
Yeah.
Because, with Josiah, not every student is going to, it won't work. It will work for him, but not for someone else.
Now, one thing that you bringing that up, one thing that I kind of want to go to the section, if I can. I literally scripted the whole thing out for you. So I was like, oh, where is it? But they were, a few of them were like, this is easy. We're finishing fast.
Yeah.
And you even said, let's go to 31 and 15. So I'm going to get there with you, 31 minutes and 15 seconds. Let's see. And I thought this was interesting, and I want to see what you think. Let's go there. So here, love how you allowed the students to come up to the DocuCam and script, or show you their evidence there. It's another way to see if they have good understanding and comprehension. You did an excellent job there. And I believe she's just and I think you're also working with her one-on-one.
Right.
Yeah, so that's good too. And look at them engaged. This is 30 minutes in. So I was like, this is great. So they're having fun. So you're creating that fun environment for them. And I think she counts on here. And then one of the kids, I think we might have missed it in the volume. But I think it's the little girl in pink. She says, at that moment, you say students were finishing really fast because they're saying, oh, I'm already done. I already have that step. And I noticed a couple of times throughout your lesson that was occurring. Where they were already done.
Yes.
They were already done. And I was like, they know this. But I remember you mentioned in the beginning of the lesson that, yes, the day before they had done 9 and 1, I think. So they really hadn't done 8 and 2 yet. Mm-mm. They hadn't made a 10 with 8 and 2. So I was thinking, you know, and are you up for suggestions for just maybe for those students who are faster and more advanced? I was thinking possibly if you notice that they're catching on fast, and I do know when you're when you've already planned for a certain lesson, you're like, oh, I'm not prepared to do anything different. But maybe in the action of that, adding in just a trick question, just to see like, okay, if you already know this, since you guys are catching on really fast to this, let me just slow down. I'm going to give, you know, these students, you're going to do this one.
Right.
And then I'm going to have these students do this one. Let's see. I'll give you 2 minutes to answer it. And just see. And so maybe the students that get a more advanced or more rigorous problem. Right. So maybe you say, okay, what are you going to do when there's a 7 and 5? What are you going to do when there's 6 and 5? You haven't learned that yet, but let's just see if you can do it. Right. Because they were ready. Your kids were like, we're ready.
Yeah.
Like, we're ready. This is
And actually we took our mid-module.
Oh.
And so a lot of students, because we had 6 plus 9, and they were supposed to make a 10 with a 9. They made a 10 with a 6.
Oh, see.
And so they did 6 plus 4. And I was like, that's so funny that you did the 6 and not the higher number, but it still works.
It still works.
They still did it.
Yeah, it still works, and I think that's that important, and that's that higher level of thinking. Like we didn't even go over this, but what did your brain do on its own to tap into that? So that's kind of what I had noticed there too. I was like, these little ones are really, really, you know, they're ready. They're ready. There's no need in holding them back if there's, you know, if they're ready to go on.
And like super proud of these kids because at the beginning of the year,
I bet
we were worried, like, okay.
Yeah.
Some of them didn't recognize numbers.
Oh.
And so now they're like, even Judith, the one who was up there and I was helping.
Yeah. And I have her written down. She did something amazing too. Yeah.
Yeah, she was just like, what number is 9? You know, that was at the beginning of the school year. And now it's like, look, it's you. Yeah. And I was just telling our reading coach that 96% of our students passed their mid-module.
That's great.
Like, that's a super high percentage for our class. And 2 students are absent. But yeah, so super proud.
That's beautiful. Students. You can tell it. I can feel it, and you can see it definitely in the environment. So you're doing an excellent job. Like,
thank you.
Truly. So we talked about your next step to focus on more instructional strategies.
Right.
And you explained that I can help you by coming in. So I'll definitely come in to show you those things, or just maybe send some videos or just some GLAD strategies. It's always those ones that we kind of forget about. Yeah. But they're so effective, right? And I'm sure you've taken them, or you learned about them, or you've taken a PD or some point in your career, or seen them, but we forget because, you know, when we don't use them all the time, those strategies. I do want to set up a time to possibly come in to, you know, just kind of recap with you and maybe show you some of these strategies. Is next week okay sometime? Yes. I know we've been doing Wednesday or Thursday. Would that be okay?
Maybe Tuesday.
Tuesday? Okay, I don't know. Sorry, because we have Thanksgiving.
Yes.
So Tuesday. So we'll do Tuesday, and what time would be okay? We could do lunch or because it doesn't have to be necessarily during. So we'll do lunchtime. All right. And what part of all of this in the observational process with me, what has been most helpful to you?
I think it is the instant feedback.
Okay.
So it didn't take so long, and like I know that you've had experience with first graders, and so coming from your background and your education and your teaching years with first grade, and then I didn't have to wait a long time. You know, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
You saw, but
you didn't say anything.
Right, but, you know, and that you're very respectful of how I feel towards things. Like, you know, are you okay with this? Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. What would you like me to do more of? And any suggestions that you have for me just as a coach when in coaching?
No, just keep on bringing on the good instructional strategies. So, yeah, just...
Yay! Thank you. Yes, that's awesome. again, this was wonderful. This was a great experience for me to just sit and watch you. You know, I've seen you since the beginning of your career, and you've grown a lot. Almost like tear. I'm like, you go, like, I remember. I'm like, yes, get right, you got it. There you go, get him, go, yes. You know, so I'm watching and being able to just sit back and see the dynamic. And not only that, but showing, like how you said, 90% of the class passed. Like the evidence, you know, that data matters.
It does.
You know, data is what people see, what we see, what we want to see grow in our students. And you're seeing the evidence of that. So yeah, we will come in and we'll recap next week. And again, I appreciate you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.